Alright, I'm going to try and make this as painless as possible. I know almost every channel does one of these videos, but I think it's an important spot to start if you're just getting into wood boat building and maintaining. This is just a basic toolkit that I travel with when I'm off on site like I am now. We'll start with measuring tools. I like to have a nice metal rule, like a 12-inch or a 6-inch. This one just came out of an old combo square where the head snapped off. Works great. You can get a wood rule, but I always find that I step on them and snap them or something goes wrong. So metal rule's a little more reliable. 6-inch combo square. You can get a 12-inch or a 4-inch. But I find a 6-inch fits most places that I'm trying to work. You can tuck it in your pocket and it usually stays there. You don't have to go and get a Starrett. I know a lot of people love them. I used to have one. But a good quality one from a hardware store will work just fine. Just double check it, make sure it's accurate, and you'll be perfectly happy. And you won't have to cry if it falls off the side of the boat into the harbor. So keep that in mind. All of these tools, be reasonable with what you spend on them because the likelihood of them falling in the water is pretty good. Bevel, sliding T-bevels, kind of a must if you're going to work on boats. You're always picking up bevels from something and transferring it to another thing, be it a machine or another piece. You don't have to spend a fortune on them. Get the shiniest thing out there. This one was a 50-cent yard sale find. Works really good. Just make sure that they lock in place. If you want to go to the hardware store and get one, be my guest. I like to use a bevel board in combination with the T-bevel. I feel like it's easier to read than using a protractor if you are on an extreme budget and just want to get started. Go get a protractor. They do work. You just got to be more careful when you're reading your angles. This one is made by Veritas. If you flip it over, it's got a dovetail scale on the back along with a polygon scale. Very usable tool, very user-friendly. A framing square. You don't need it every day in boat building and maintaining boats, but you will find situations where you need one. You don't have to go spend 65 bucks and get the super expensive framing squares. This one was 15 bucks at the local hardware store. Works just fine. Again, double check them after you buy them. If it's not square, take it back. Don't waste your time trying to bring it into true. If you have all the patience in the world, be my guest, go for it. But my preference is just to go get a good one off the shelf that is ready to rock and roll. Tape measures, 25 foot is usually max. I find that it's actually a little too wide at times to reach places that I'm trying to measure. Something like a 10-footer will do almost everything that you want to do. The blade is a little bit narrower and it'll accomplish most tasks. In the world of percussion instruments, I like a Neoprene Mallet. This is a very user-friendly tool. It'll save your wrist from a day's worth of beating on chisels. If you want to use a joiner's mallet, be my guest. I use them from time to time, but typically I prefer to use this. It's a very nice tool to have. A carpenter's hammer, a little carpenter's hammer. You don't need a big framing hammer. Just a little 7-ounce carpenter's hammer will do almost anything that you're going to do on a wood boat. Mainly they're used for putting tacks in and pulling tacks out for battens and things like that. I'll also normally have a ball peen hammer with me, and as you get into working on wood boats, you'll see why. They're really useful for doing rivets and things like that. We'll get into fastening equipment. Just a good screwdriver. I like having a ratcheting screwdriver, so I only have to have one handle that accepts multiple tips for all the different screw types. The other advantage of having a ratcheting screwdriver is you don't have to let go of it to reposition your hand and risk dropping it off the side of the boat. So something to keep in mind is how soft the screwdrivers are if you get a set of just fixed blade screwdrivers. If it's too soft, you'll be torquing into a screw, either pulling it in tight to the piece or pulling a screw out. It snaps off and it just shoots into a nice finished piece of work, and now you've got to do a repair. So get a good quality tip. That's the big thing with screwdrivers. Braces, they're still applicable in wood boats, if you ask me. When you get into like doing restorations on old boats, a lot of them are fastened with slotted screws, and you have more control with one of these than you do with an impact. You can really put some pressure on it, really torque it out, and it will save a lot of headache. I'm far less likely to snap off the head of a screw using one of these, either putting it in or taking it out. I do use these when I'm building a new boat, especially if I'm using a really dry oak for my frames or something like that. It'll save you from hating life when you snap off screws. Some kind of drill in today's world is almost a must. If you don't want to spend the money on a cordless drill, go and get a halfway decent corded drill, and it'll probably last you your whole lifetime or experience playing with boats. I only really use these for punching in countersinks and doing things like that. Drilling the odd hole, but I very, very rarely drive screws with my drill. If I'm going to drive a lot of screws, I'll use an impact driver, but I learned the hard way that it's really easy to mess up the heads on screws when you just use an impact driver. So be ready for that if that's going to be your means of driving fasteners. All that covered, we'll get into edge tools. A good smoothing plane will do most of your work if you're just trying to do a basic toolkit. This is a number 4 Stanley. I picked it up for 35 bucks at a resale shop. Works fantastic. It took a little cleanup and tuning, but still works fine. You can go spend the money on a Lee Valley or Lee Nielsen. When I say Lee Valley, I mean Veritas. And that will get the job done. A lot of times with that, I'll use card scrapers because you always end up running into some kind of reversing grain, and you got to clean up some of that headache. If you get card scrapers, get a good burnisher. Again, that's a Veritas, and it will take care of that. In addition to your smoothing plane, consider getting a good low-angle block plane. If you can't find an old one that's worthy of a rehab, I recommend Lee Nielsen, Veritas, or Wood River. All very good tools. You get them. They just need a honing and go to work. Then we're down to the most used tool when it comes to wood boats, and that's chisels. This is where I would spend my money. This set is made by Two Cherry. I've had it since boat building school. It's now my traveling kit. My really nice Lee Nielsens stay at my shop, and I love them. They're more comfortable to hold, in my opinion, but these are just as effective. One thing to consider when you're getting chisels is make sure they match your machines. And what I mean by that is these are metric, and almost all of my machines use fractions. So there's a slight variance between them, and it's doable, but you have to be conscious of that when you're setting things up. You don't need every chisel that was ever made. Just a basic kit would be a 1-inch, a 3/4, a 1/2 inch, and a 1/4. And those will accomplish 99% of the work that you're ever going to do on a boat. If you're into bigger boats, you obviously already know that you're probably going to want to get some slicks. They make life a lot easier. Look up timber framing slicks or anything like that, and you'll find what you're after. a good paring chisel. I think every boat person should have at least one paring chisel. This one's made by Robert Sorby. They sell it at Lee Valley. If you're only going to get one, get a 1-inch slick, or paring chisel that is. Makes life a lot easier when you go to clean bungs off the side of a boat or on a deck or something like that. Very useful tool. And then lastly, a very nice handsaw. Typically I have 2 saws with me. I'll have a crosscut saw and a dovetail saw. You can get saws that have a rip tooth pattern on one side and a crosscut on the other, and they work great, but normally you can get the job done with a dovetail and a crosscut. So that's that. What am I forgetting? Oh yeah, sharpening stuff. That's kind of a need be. I like diamond plates. They stay flat. I used Waterstones for years. Found out they were really maintenance heavy. Switched over to these, and I'll never go back. This one is a combo. It's a 400 grit on one side and 1,000 on the other. And that'll get you really close to a super fine edge. Then you can touch it up with a strop. This is just a $4 chunk of leather from a craft store glued to a chunk of plywood. And that'll get you in business. If you want to spend the money on extra plates, be my guest, but you don't really have to. All those do is just get you a slightly more refined edge that's probably going to wear away within the first 15-20 strokes of whatever tool you're using. And I think that pretty well covers everything that I normally travel with. If you think of something that I missed, let me know down in the comments. And this is just a bare bones what I travel with when I'm working on things. I hope it's helpful for anybody that's getting started out in boat building or maintaining or whatever you're doing. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please hit that subscribe and the notification icon. It helps a lot. I'm trying to turn this channel into something that's actually useful for people, and hopefully it's not just repetitive information like you see on other channels. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.